2 years ago, I was making decent money. Not great money, not struggling money, decent money. Somewhere around $60,000 a year, which by most American standards is a livable salary. And I had almost nothing saved. Not because anything dramatic happened. No medical emergency, no job loss, no family crisis. Just the slow, invisible drain of spending more than I thought I was spending every single month for years. The kind of financial situation where you're not broke enough to panic, but you're not building anything either. You're just moving money from your paycheck to various companies and wondering why nothing is accumulating. The thing that changed it for me wasn't a raise, wasn't a side hustle, wasn't some investment strategy I discovered. It was a philosophy. Specifically, it was reading about how Japanese households think about money and realizing that the entire operating system underneath my spending was fundamentally broken compared to what I was reading about. Japan's cultural relationship with money is almost the mirror opposite of America's. Here, wealth is performed. New car, new house, new wardrobe. Congratulations, post about it. In Japan, wealth is hidden. Displaying it is considered tasteless. There's actually a word, shumatsu, for the social respect that comes from living modestly and quietly. The less you show, the more admired you are. That concept alone broke something open in my brain because I'd been doing the exact opposite my entire adult life without realizing it. I started applying these Japanese money principles one at a time. Didn't change my income, didn't cancel everything overnight, just changed the philosophy underneath the behavior. In 12 months, my savings went from almost nothing to over $19,000. Same job, same apartment, same salary. Different operating system. These are the 10 habits that did it. Kakeibo, the handwritten household ledger. This is the one that started everything for me, and it's over 120 years old. Kakeibo was invented in 1904 by Japan's first female journalist as a tool for women to take control of household finances using nothing but a notebook and a pen. The system is almost insultingly simple. At the beginning of each month, you write down how much money is coming in, how much you need for fixed expenses, how much you want to save, and how much you have left to spend. Then, every single day, you write down what you spent and sort each purchase into one of 4 categories: needs, wants, culture, which includes books and experiences, and unexpected expenses. At the end of the month, you ask yourself 3 questions. How much did I save? What went well? What can I improve? That's the entire system. And I know what you're thinking, because I thought the same thing. That sounds too simple to actually work. That's exactly why it works. Here's the thing about budgeting apps that nobody talks about. When you tap your card and a number flashes on a screen, your brain barely registers it. The transaction happened, but you didn't really feel it. When you sit down at night and physically write food delivery, $42, want, your hand is telling your brain something an app never could. You chose to spend that money. That was a decision. Writing it down forces you to own the decision in a way that automation never will. Behavioral researchers call this cognitive friction. And friction is exactly what most American spending systems are designed to eliminate. Tap to pay, one-click purchase, auto-pay everything. Frictionless sounds efficient. What it actually produces is a complete disconnection between earning and spending. And that disconnection is expensive. I tracked it in my own life. The first month I used Kakeibo, my discretionary spending dropped by around 22% from a notebook that cost $3. Not because I deprived myself of anything meaningful, because writing things down made me realize how many purchases I was making that I couldn't even justify sorting into a category. They weren't needs. They weren't culture. They weren't even real wants. They were just things that happened when I wasn't paying attention. Mottainai, the deep shame of waste. This concept has no direct English translation, and that absence tells you something important. Mottainai is the feeling. genuine emotional discomfort that arises when something useful is wasted, discarded, or undervalued. In Japanese culture, throwing away food that could have been eaten or replacing something that could have been repaired doesn't just feel inefficient, it feels wrong, morally wrong, in a way that's embedded in the culture from childhood. American culture is structured around the opposite impulse. The USDA estimates that American households waste roughly 30% of the food they buy. That's approximately $2,100 per household per year going directly into the garbage. We discard around 82 pounds of clothing per person annually. We replace phones every 2 to 3 years when the devices are engineered to last 4. We throw away furniture when we move because it's easier than taking it with us. When I started practicing Mottainai, the first thing I did was spend 1 week photographing everything I threw away from my fridge. The amount was genuinely embarrassing. Spinach going soft, rice I forgot about, yogurt I bought optimistically that expired before I opened it. I was throwing away roughly $40 of food every week without thinking about it. That's over $2,000 a year from my refrigerator. Not from poor financial decisions, from not paying attention to what I already owned. I started meal planning around what I already had. Started freezing things the day I bought them if I knew I wouldn't use them immediately. Started buying smaller quantities more often instead of bulk buying things that would go bad before I could finish them. My grocery spending dropped by close to 30% in 3 months. Not because I was eating less, because I was wasting less. The broader principle extends far beyond food. It changes how you relate to everything you own. You repair instead of replace. You use something completely before reaching for the next version. You find a second purpose for things before discarding them. There's a Japanese art form called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold lacquer instead of being thrown away. The repaired crack becomes part of the object's story. The damage doesn't diminish its value. It adds to it. Apply that philosophy to how you think about the things you own, and your relationship with spending changes permanently. Hara Hachi Bu, stop at 80%. This principle comes from Confucian teaching and is practiced in Okinawa, which has one of the highest concentrations of people over 100 years old anywhere in the world. The idea is to stop eating when you're about 80% satisfied, rather than pushing to completely full. Most Americans eat until discomfort. We pile plates. We supersize. We order more than we need because we paid for the meal and we're going to get our money's worth. The financial translation of this principle is the most powerful idea on this entire list, and it's not complicated. You live as though you earn 80% of what you actually earn. The remaining 20% doesn't exist in your spending reality. It moves automatically into savings and investments before you ever see it. The math on this is worth sitting with. The US personal savings rate was around 4% in early 2026. Japanese cultural defaults through practices like Hara Hachi Bu push toward 20%. On a $60,000 salary, that gap between saving 4% and saving 20% is the difference between saving $2,400 a year and saving $12,000. $47 million. Same income, same job. The only variable is whether you treated 80% or 100% as your ceiling. But there's a deeper layer here that goes beyond the math. In Okinawa, Hara Hachi Bu isn't taught as a diet hack or a saving strategy. It's taught as a form of respect. For the food, because you don't waste it. For your body, because you don't burden it. For your future self, because you leave resources available for tomorrow instead of consuming everything today. That last one is the part American financial culture gets consistently wrong. We sacrifice tomorrow's stability for today's comfort without thinking about it. The average American carrying $6,500 in credit card debt at 22% interest isn't making a financial decision.
They're eating until they're 120% full and wondering why they feel sick. Hara Hachi Bu applied to money is telling your future self, I left something for you.
I didn't consume it all. That's not deprivation. That's respect. Kaizen. 1% better every month. Most people know this word from manufacturing. Toyota made it famous. But in Japanese daily life, Kaizen applies to everything. And applied to personal finance, it's the antidote to the dramatic overhaul that every January produces and every March abandons. The principle is that you don't try to fix everything at once. You improve by 1% repeatedly over a long period of time. This month, you reduce dining out by 10%. Next month, you increase your savings contribution by 1%. The month after, you cancel one subscription. Then you negotiate one bill. Then you switch one brand name product to generic. Each change is small enough that it requires almost no willpower. Each change is easy enough that your brain doesn't resist it. Here's why this matters neurologically. Large changes activate your brain's fear response. That's why most people who radically cut their budget in January abandon it by March. The change was too dramatic. The discomfort was too immediate. And willpower eventually loses to survival instinct. Kaizen flies underneath that response. 1% improvements don't trigger resistance. They accumulate quietly until one day you look up and your savings rate went from 4% to 18% over a year, and you genuinely can't identify a single moment when it felt hard. That's the point. That's the design. Ikigai. What is the money actually for? Ikigai translates roughly as reason for being. In Western contexts, it's been popularized as a career framework, the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. But in Japan, Ikigai isn't about career optimization. It's about having a purpose that gives meaning to your daily choices. That purpose could be anything. Raising your kids, maintaining your health, building something, creating something, being present for the people you love. When you apply Ikigai to money, it answers the question that no budgeting system ever asks. What is this money actually for? Most people either save without purpose, because they're supposed to, or spend without intention, because something looked good. There's no guiding philosophy underneath the behavior. Ikigai provides that philosophy. When you know what your money is for, when you've identified the specific life you're trying to build, every spending decision becomes a vote for or against that life. Impulse purchases don't just feel expensive when you have Ikigai, they feel irrelevant. Most of the time, for most purchases, the honest answer is no. Wabi-Sabi, finding beauty in what you already have. This is one of the most profound ideas on this list, and the most direct antidote to the consumer culture that drives American spending. Wabi-Sabi is the appreciation of things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. A scratched wooden table that holds the memory of 100 meals. A sweater with a small repair that shows how long you've loved it. A phone with a cracked corner that still works perfectly. In America, imperfection is a reason to replace. Scratch on the screen, new phone. Scuff on the shoes, new shoes. Couch cushions slightly flattened, time to browse furniture websites. The consumer economy depends entirely on your dissatisfaction with things that still function. Wabi-Sabi invites you to find satisfaction in them instead. The financial math on this mindset shift is significant when you calculate it over time. Americans spend roughly $9,500 a year on categories most driven by aesthetic dissatisfaction. Apparel, home furnishings, consumer electronics. If Wabi-Sabi reduced that spending by 25% by helping you keep things longer, repair instead of replace, and appreciate what you already own, that's $2,375 per year redirected into investments. At 8% over 25 years, that's roughly $183,000. built from a philosophy of finding beauty in what you already have. Osouji, the annual financial reset. In Japan, Osouji is performed at the end of each year. Families thoroughly clean their entire home, discard what no longer serves them, and enter the new year with physical and mental clarity. It's more intentional than spring cleaning. It's a ritual of letting go and starting fresh. Applied to finances, Osouji becomes an annual audit of your entire financial life. Once a year, December or January works well, you sit down and review everything. Every subscription, every recurring charge, every insurance policy, every investment allocation, every auto pay, every debt balance. You cancel what isn't serving you, renegotiate what can be lowered, and realign everything with where your life actually is now, rather than where it was when you set things up. Most people build financial systems once and never revisit them. Subscriptions accumulate, premiums creep upward, investment allocations drift. An annual Osouji catches all of it. The first time I did this, I found over $300 a month in charges I had completely forgotten about or no longer needed. That's more than $3,600 a year draining silently from an account I wasn't watching closely enough. One annual review, one afternoon, thousands of dollars were covered. Chokin, save first, then spend. Chokin literally means savings, but the habit it represents is more specific than that. You save before you spend, not whatever happens to be left over at the end of the month. The moment money enters your account, a portion of it leaves immediately into savings or investment. The spending happens with whatever remains. This sounds like a small structural change. It isn't. When saving comes first, your spending contracts naturally to fit the remaining amount. Parkinson's law applies to money exactly the way it applies to time. Work expands to fill the time available. Spending expands to fill the income available. Chokin breaks this law by reducing available income before spending begins. Let me show you what this looks like in actual numbers. Someone earning $4,800 a month after taxes, under the typical American pattern, spend throughout the month, save whatever's left, will almost always save close to nothing. The spending fills the income. Under Chokin, an automatic transfer moves $960 on the morning after payday into a combination of retirement accounts and savings. The spending reality becomes $3,840. The brain adjusts within about 2 months because humans are remarkably adaptable when an option simply doesn't exist. After a year, that person has saved and invested $11,520.
The previous approach would have produced maybe $1,700 in a good month. Over 20 years at 8% average returns, the Chokin habit produces approximately $570,000. The old habit produces roughly $100,000. Same salary, same city, same life. The only variable is the order. Save first, spend second. Shinrin-Yoku, free living. Shinrin-Yoku means forest bathing, the practice of spending quiet time in nature as a form of mental restoration. It costs nothing. The broader principle it represents is what I think of as free living, the deliberate choice to build your leisure, your social life, your weekends around experiences that don't require a transaction. In America, fun and spending have become almost synonymous. A night out, a weekend trip, a concert, even shopping is framed as entertainment. The average American household spends roughly $3,000 a year on entertainment. Japanese daily leisure looks fundamentally different. Walking, cooking together at home, reading, gardening, sitting in parks, quiet contemplation. The richest moments of daily life happening without anyone spending anything. When I started building my weekends around things that cost nothing, parks, cooking with people I actually wanted to spend time with, long walks, libraries, my entertainment spending dropped by over 60% in 3 months. And the quality of my weekends improved because I stopped equating enjoyment with consumption and started equating it with presence. Those two things are very different, and we've been trained to confuse them. Hansei, honest financial reflection. This is the last habit and the one that holds all the others together. Hansei is the Japanese practice of sincere self-reflection. Not self-criticism, not guilt, just an honest examination of what happened, what worked, what didn't, and what you'd do differently. In Japanese schools, children practice Hansei from a young age. You don't reflect because you failed. You reflect because reflection is how growth happens.
Applied to finances, Hansei is the monthly review that closes the Kakeibo loop. 10 minutes at the end of each month. You look at what you spent, what you saved, and you ask 3 questions without judgment. Did I meet my savings goal? What purchases brought me genuine value? What would I change next month? That's it. This habit is the most important on the list because it's the mechanism by which all the other habits improve. Mottainai gets sharper because you notice the waste. Hara Hachi Bu gets easier because you see where you overfilled. Kaizen gets direction because you identify the next small improvement. Without Hansei, these are all good ideas. With it, they compound. And compound is exactly the right word. Every habit on this list operates on the same principle as compound interest. Small, consistent inputs repeated over time, producing results wildly disproportionate to the effort. A $3 notebook and 10 minutes of daily attention doesn't sound like a wealth-building strategy. Neither does stopping at 80% or finding beauty in a scratched table. But these behaviors, stacked together, practiced month after month, year after year, produce something that no income level can produce on its own. They produce a relationship with money that's grounded, intentional, and genuinely sustainable. The most financially secure people I've studied, not the highest earners, the most secure, share one thing. They understand how money actually works. They know the difference between an asset and a liability. They understand that a dollar saved arrives without tax, without extra effort, without burnout. They have financial literacy at a foundational level. And financial literacy is the soil these habits grow in. Without it, Kakeibo is just notebook. Chokin is just a concept you heard once. Mottainai is a word you can't pronounce.
With it, these habits become a system. A quiet, boring, profoundly effective system that builds wealth the same way a Japanese garden grows. Slowly, intentionally, with nothing wasted and nothing rushed. Japan figured this out over a century ago. The principles survived wars, economic collapses, and every version of modernity thrown at them because they're not built on tactics. They're built on something deeper. Respect for money as a resource. Respect for yourself as the person responsible for it. And the quiet discipline to protect both. You don't need a bigger paycheck to start. You might already earn enough. You just need a notebook, a pen, and the willingness to pay attention to where your money actually goes. That's where it starts. That's where it always starts.